Oh, my butt hurts. My butt hurt.
I bet you are.
This chair is starting to fall apart.
Nice.
I am on fire.
Immune. Clay, imagine.
Oh my god! Help me! Help me! Somebody help me! It's been a while since I've done one of these. Hello everybody, my name is Kimada Kinpa, and today I'm reviewing Risk of Rain 2. For those who don't know, Risk of Rain 2 is a 3D roguelike game which recently had its 1.0 release on the Steam store, and it's the type of game I would normally never play. And I've really liked roguelikes so much. I don't really know why. I think, it's just that they didn't really mesh well with me at the time. It also doesn't help that I was bad at them. The one roguelike I ever got into was Wizard of Legends, and I think the furthest I ever gotten that was like halfway through the 3rd floor, so I don't even know what the final boss of the game looks like. What I'm trying to say is I shouldn't like this game as much as I do. The reason this video took so long to come out is because instead of working on the script and, recording the audio for this video, I was playing Risk of Rain 2. At the time of writing the script, I've had the game for a few days over a month, and I have basically around 60 hours in the game. And I think that speaks measures about my fondness of it. But I do want to talk about some of the stuff in the game in more detail, and some of the stuff I actually don't like in the game. Because, don't get me wrong, I love the game, but it definitely has problems in my opinion. Now, let's talk about the most important part of this game, the gameplay. The game is a lot of fun. The core gameplay is that you play as different survivors with different character stats and spells, and fight monsters across multiple floors for gold to spend on chests and shrines in order to gain items. There is a minimum of 5 floors and a boss floor. No, I say minimum, and we will come back to that later. On each floor, different monsters can spawn with different stats, and each floor kinda has like a theme around them. There's a desert floor, a plains floor, hell. And on these floors are randomly generated chests and shrines. Chest drops items, and I'll talk about that later as well. We have a whole section about items because they're pretty important to gameplay. On top of this, different types of shrines can spawn, which can be activated in various fashions. The chance shrine requires gold and acts like a chest at a lower price and can drop 2 items instead of 1, but will randomly drop items, and each time it is used the price increases. If you're unlucky, you could activate the shrine multiple times without getting anything from it, so you're generally better off grabbing chests first and using the remainder of your money on these shrines. There's the Shrine of Combat, which doesn't cost any resources to activate, but summons a large number of monsters to fight for extra gold. Shrine of Blood costs a percentage of the player's HP and gives gold. And there's a few other shrines that could affect gameplay. Now let's rewind a bit to when I talked about the minimum number of floors you could travel to beat the game. Once you reach the 5th floor and the final floor before the boss, you can modify the teleporter in order to loop back to floor 1. Why would you want to do this? To get stronger. As you traverse different floors, more items will spawn, and your character will be able to become stronger because of that. On top of this, there are like different secret floors that act differently, but normally give some kind of reward for going through them. And of course, as you proceed to each new floor, the game gets more difficult, but the scaling difficulty doesn't actually relate to the number of floors you're on directly. Difficulty in this game scales based off of the amount of time you've spent in a given run. It's possible to reach a high difficulty if you took too long on a floor or something, which will lead to you being super weak compared to the monsters you have to fight. And on top of this, there are like 3 external difficulties. I don't really know how to describe it, but basically you have 3 different options: Drizzle, Rainstorm, and Monsoon, which if we were to describe it in more common difficulty options would be easy, normal, and hard respectively. Now don't get me wrong, you will still be playing easy, normal, and hard in any given run, no matter which of these you select. It's just the difficulty scaling and healing is altered. Drizzle is the easiest, which will mean that you have a slower difficulty scaling and faster healing. Monsoon is the fastest difficulty scaling and lower healing. And Rainstorm is somewhere in the middle. To talk about each difficulty after playing the game for a little while, I think Drizzle is super easy and honestly kind of boring. I don't like playing it, but I definitely think it's good for the game. It's easy, or at least a lot easier than the other difficulties. So when you're new to the game and you're trying to figure stuff out, it's good for easing you into it. I do not like Monsoon, but that's mostly a personal thing. Because of the faster difficulty scaling, you can't really stick around on the floor for too long without getting fucked by some enemies on the next floor. The amount of time that's safe to stay on one floor of Monsoon is like 5 minutes, which really doesn't allow time to explore the entire floor and get all the items, and this fucks with my OCD. Rainstorm is the Goldilocks zone for me. I'm not rushed to get to the next floor, but I'm not given like 20 minutes to look around like you do in Drizzle and just, buy all the items you can. And to talk about getting stronger, you level up in this game, and you get XP from killing monsters or have excess gold converted to XP at the end of a floor when you activate the teleporter, but that's not the main way you get stronger in this game. Basically, all your stat growth comes from items. Items are what make your character strong and come in different tiers: white, green, red, yellow, blue, and actives. White items are basically the lowest level of them, the most common, and generally will give the player pretty basic stat buffs or modifiers. Green items are uncommon items, still pretty easy to find, less so than white, and give more notable and specialized abilities. These items can give different abilities, like an AoE fire attack on kill, or can deal damage around you when you're hit by an attack. Red items are like their legendary items, big stats or abilities. I believe the yellow items are also on level with the red items, I'm not exactly sure, but those are specifically tied to bosses. When you proceed to the next floor, you activate the floor's teleporter, which summons a boss. After killing the floor boss, the teleporter will drop items, which I believe are guaranteed to be at least green items, but also have a chance to drop a yellow. These are generally very strong as well. Orange items, or the active items, are active abilities. These are also super broad, and are generally pretty strong, but are locked behind a certain cooldown, which is generally also, decently long. The final type of item is the blue or lunar items. Blue items are not naturally dropped by bosses or chests, but instead have to be bought in pods that can randomly spawn on Forge or in the lunar item shop. Both cannot be bought with gold, but instead with lunar coins that randomly drop from any enemy. These are curse items, which means you get a massive buff, but it normally comes with some kind of larger drawback as well. So it's something you don't immediately want to pick up. You want to think about what lunar item is in front of you, and whether or not it'll work well for your build. All items are dropped randomly. You don't know which item you're going to get from a chest, so your build is basically whatever RNGs has decided for you that day. You could say, wow, I want to build crit today, but the game can say, no, here's a personal shield generator. Now, there are ways to still force builds, or at least alter them to something you like far more than just personal shield gens and fresh meats. Item scrappers can randomly spawn on the map, which will allow you to scrap items for item scrap. The scrap itself is pretty useless, but I prioritize when using a 3D printer. When activated, 3D printers will take a random item in your inventory, though as said before, item printers will prioritize item scrap and turn it into whatever item the printer will print. The item has to be of the same quality, so you can't use a white item to print in green or whatever. Item printers will also spawn randomly in floors and print random items. The randomness definitely helps with making the game replayable and forces you to adapt your build and playstyle, but I do have some problems with how certain items are balanced. Now, before I continue, let me say I think most of the items are pretty balanced. Like, there aren't really many items I don't ever want to pick up, but there are definitely items I think are redundant or just flat out bad. Now, I'm pretty sure the developers said they don't want every item to be strong, and I think that makes sense. Like, personal shield generator is normally a pretty bad item because it gets rid of one-shot protection, which is a mechanic which stops one attack from instantly killing you, but due to the way that shields are treated in relation to health, it will negate that. But if you're to pick up something like Transcendence or Shaped Glass, which also removes one-shot protection, you might as well be stacking these fuckers like there's no tomorrow. It has a niche use, but there's a few items, as said before, that I think are just completely outclassed. Fresh Meat is an item that heals you on kill. It doesn't sound bad, right? But it only heals 2 HP across 3 seconds in a game where you start with like 300 health. So that doesn't sound bad. You can stack multiple items to buff their abilities. Well, what does stacking Fresh Meat do? It scales linearly, good start, on the time you heal 2 HP per second. Like, it's better to have than to not have, but there are 5 other items which basically do the exact same thing, just better, or have a niche use to justify picking them up. Like, I know you probably want bad items to scrap, right? If an item is going to be so outclassed to the point where you're just going to turn it into scrap anyway, why not just have chests be able to drop scrap, or force players to have to make tough decisions when deciding which item they want to scrap, by not having these super redundant items? Like, my problem with item balance is only restricted to like 5 items in the game, which isn't a lot and definitely doesn't make the item balance bad. Like, I understand the reasoning behind it, but I find some items to be a little bit too situational for me. But as a friend once told me, in order to appreciate the good, one must first experience the bad, which is why my next review I have planned is on the anime Rent-a-Girlfriend. This is not a joke. The way items are generally handled makes this game basically endlessly replayable, and with the multiple number of varied survivors, you'll normally have a fairly different experience from run to run. And runs can go on so long where you become basically God, where nothing could kill you, and looking at something the wrong way could make it spontaneously implode, but for most runs you still have to be fairly careful. Because of the amount of monsters and damage, you kinda can't just stand still and win. Not to say you can't, just that it's not gonna happen every run. And this doesn't mean that you don't feel strong, most of the time you feel super broken, but you could still die at any moment. Overloading and Malachite enemies do big damage and can stop you from healing, so you gotta be careful. But when they do kill you, it never really feels like BS, or at least not super bad, because you're also super BS. So like, I guess by comparison, it's not so bad. Now let's talk about the characters you play. There's a pretty good variety to them. I was unsure what to expect in terms of how different they are, but I was pleasantly surprised with how unique they were from one another. You have your basic character, which is Commando, then you have your big bruiser type character in Commando, there's Piranha Plant, Genji from Overwatch. Each character has a fairly unique playstyle, so no matter what playstyle you personally like, you could generally play the way you want to play. Commando is kind of the run and gun type character, Huntress is the speedy death from 1,000 cuts archetype, and Artificer is bad. And on top of this, you can customize characters even more. Each character has a few abilities that can be switched out and change the way the character plays, but there are obviously some abilities that are just straight out better than the others, and the same with characters. Character balance isn't something that really matters too much, and I haven't extensively played all the characters in the game, but the 3 characters I've played the most are Huntress, Mercenary, and Artificer. Huntress is kind of weak, but I think that's fine. The only real problem I have with Mercenary is that he's kind of buggy, but Artificer could sometimes feel really bad to play. Your mouse one in this game is a basic attack. It's shoot or swing your sword or punch or whatever. It's a basic ability, but Artificer's is a spell. It deals a lot of damage when hit, but it's slow moving and has to be charged, so hitting it could be difficult. I think most of her other abilities are fine, but I would love to see Artificer's Mass 1 getting buffed or changed. I think either making the attack faster, it recharge faster, or recharge 4 charges at a time rather than 1 will make her feel a lot better. But you know, I think she's supposed to be this challenge character, so I could understand the reason for them not wanting to buff her. I have 3 more complaints that do relate to gameplay that aren't a huge deal, especially because the game is getting patched. First of all, the game is kind of buggy sometimes. Like, I'm not sure if it's still in the game, but there is a bug that makes it so you can't move or shoot when you spawn into a floor, and while on common, this will end runs. Another 2 that I ran into was using Mercenary's R ability could sometimes just remove me from the game, and one time during the final phase of the final boss, Mithra just took our items and fucking outed 5,000.
He's in the
Punch him.
Oh, okay,
he's taking it.
items now.
I have to run. Wait, what?
Wait,
Wait, what?
hold on a second.
Wait, no, wait, this is illegal. Wait, this is illegal.
Wait, what the fuck are we supposed to do?
What?
I died!
Secondly, I wish you could save runs. Not like, I saved and I made an oopsies, let me reload my save. Like, I've done long runs before, and I want to take a break, or I have to go do something, and either I have to keep the game paused and running in the background on my PC, or I have to end the run. Maybe make it something like Minecraft Hardcore, that deletes the save data after you end the run or die. The last thing is that unlocking certain items and character moves are a fucking pain. Like, I get that good items and moves should be hard to get, but some of these are just really annoying, and I wish they'd be at least a little bit easier. I think the visuals of this game are pretty good. Like, I don't exactly have too much to say, except that it looks pretty and does well to differentiate enemies, survivors, and objects from the background. Players, enemies, and interactable objects are normally a pretty bright color, which helps them pop out against more diluted backgrounds. And the different maps are pretty visually distinct without feeling like they're from entirely different games. I think most of the map layouts are pretty good. I think most of the visual design for the maps are pretty good, except for the swamp. I hate the swamp. The swamp is so annoying. It's ass to navigate. It's pretty difficult to see certain things. It's just bad. It's annoying. I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate it. That's not even in the script. I'm just speaking my mind here. I hate it, guys. Guys, why is the swamp in this game? I hate it so much. And the music bops. The only real problem I have with the game is visual clarity once you start looping. With so many enemies spawning and many particle effects, it can get super hard to see what's going on. And on top of this, the bodies remain on the ground after kills for quite some time, and can clip over important stuff like chests and whatnot. Now, I have no idea how to deal with the visual clutter of the enemies and effects without cutting them down, which I don't really think should be done, but I think reducing the time monster bodies stay on the ground would definitely help make things a little bit more clear. You know, now, I think that's all I have to say about the game. No. I feel like I'm forgetting something important. Oh, that's right, my favorite part of the video game. Artifacts make this game infinitely replayable. Artifacts are game modifiers that alter the way the game is played, and I say this in a very broad manner because what is modified It's pretty broad. One artifact allows you to choose the items you get from chests or shrine drops, one makes it so only elite monsters can spawn, one even changes the survivor you play every floor. Now don't get me wrong, even without artifacts this game has a ton of replayability, but artifacts just add even more. There are 16 different artifacts in this game, and some of my favorite runs have come from when my friends and I have activated like 4 of them. My 2 favorite runs were one with Swarm, Vengeance, Command, and Chaos, where we were constantly killing each other, or when our doppelganger spawned, it would take like 3 minutes to defeat them because 2 of us were stacking tougher times. The other was with Swarm, Vengeance, Command, Metamorphosis, and Evolution, where the monsters got Dio's best friend and kept on respawning after we killed them. Artifacts add so much chaos that it can make the game either easier or harder depending on what you want, and it really is just kind of the icing on top of the already solid game that exists. This game is a lot of fun, and it's pretty cheap. The gameplay is smooth, the visuals and presentation are pretty, there's a ton of content, and apparently more updates on their way, so it's not like this game doesn't have anything to offer. I think it's a great starter roguelike. It's fairly simple and pretty easy to get a hang of, at least compared to other roguelikes, I think. So I feel like there isn't really too much of a barrier of entry outside of items synergy. The only time I wouldn't recommend this game is for someone who doesn't have a fairly competent PC, because this game is fairly graphically intensive. Even with my current build, which is pretty powerful, I'm still getting like pretty massive frame rate drops sometimes. And during one of my runs, one of my friends was constantly worried about his PC overheating. In order to stop his PC from overheating, he had to open up the side plate and had 2 fans pointing at it. But besides that, this game gets my seal of approval. And if you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you want. If you like this stuff and want to continue to see certain things I make, you're gonna have to subscribe, because my upload schedule is super inconsistent. It just depends on whether or not I have something I want to say or like something I want to make. Currently, I have a handful of videos lined up for what I want to do. I just don't know when I'm going to be able to get them out, depending on how much work I have to do and whatnot. Alright, but if you decide to stick around, I'll see you guys next time. My name is Kimada Kimpa, and thank you for watching.